Welcome to Is This About Business? My name is Mike Leyva-Doherty, and I am your host.
My name is Frankie Leyva-Doherty, and I'm your other host. And we are joined today with Michelle Nichols, and she's the owner of Small Car Performance, and she's going to be here to talk about herself and her business. So thank you, Michelle, for being here today this
Yeah, of
morning.
course.
So, Michelle, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story? You have a background in engineering, health, and now you're the owner of Crooked Finger Designs and Small Car Performance. So, maybe just give a little bit of insight in how, your career has transformed and how you ended up being the owner of multiple businesses.
Okay. Well, long story. I have a degree in engineering. I went into healthcare and systems engineering out of graduate school. So worked in different hospital systems across the country for 10 years. And when I had my first kid, I stepped away from working full time and stayed home for a few years. And then my husband and I were, looking. We both grew up in families of small business owners and more blue collar. Like my dad was a plumber, my husband's dad was an electrician. And so we were kind of drawn to the idea of owning and running a small business. Something that was blue collar was really kind of connected to us just because of our backgrounds. And so, we spent a lot of time looking and talking to different people. And we have always been, my husband grew up working on Volkswagen Vanagons. When we met in college, we would break down a lot in these vans on dates. We've driven across the country multiple times in them.
Wow.
We have lots of stories about these vans. And so there was an opportunity to kind of get into a small business, buy a small business that was already into this world of Vanagons that we were familiar with. There's an engineering aspect of the business that already existed because we have a e-commerce platform and design and engineer parts as well. Um, and so there were a lot of things that kind of fit in terms of looking at what might make sense in terms of like something that we could own and make our own as like a family. And so we ended up gravitating towards um, small car in 2021. There's a whole big story of how that evolved, and we didn't even live in Washington. It was the middle of COVID. I was 6 months pregnant with our third child at the time. So there's a whole story behind how we actually made it happen. But ended up out in Washington, and we bought a small car in February 2021. I had our third kid 2 weeks after we closed. Yep. I don't remember much about that year because I was in the shop running it 2 weeks after I had him with him on me for the first 6 months of his life. So yeah, it was that's kind of the evolution of high level how we evolved into small car. But we've always loved these vans and traveled in them, broken down in them, things like that. And kind of that engineering aspect that small car had was a really nice fit for both of us. We're both engineers. So um yeah, that's kind of how we evolved into small car.
That's amazing.
It was a really great, yeah, that must have been a really wild year to like
It
buying a
was
business
fun.
alone is
Yeah,
interesting.
it was
Buying
wild.
a
Right.
business and having a baby right after is a
Mhm.
big, big month.
Yeah, moving across the country and everything. I mean, you tackled everything all in one. You're like, all right, well, let's do this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah, it was, we had this little pull behind trailer camper, and I ended up renting our house in Georgia for 6 months and renting a house in Tacoma for 6 months. And, um, I figured if it because we didn't know if the deal was gonna happen, but it was the middle of October, And like air travel was kind of funky still. It was like when like California was shutting down. They were like, no one can drive through California. And so we had this like little pull behind trailer, and we just like drove across the country. I'd rented both houses, and I figured if the deal didn't go through, we would just go back home, and um it is what it is. So yeah, so that was kind of the journey. It was kind of a little leap, a 6-month leap in deciding if it was going to work or not. And yeah, it ended up working out. But yeah.
So that's can you
Yeah,
ex-
that's great.
can you explain the process a little bit of finding the business and buying the business and like what did that look like and how did you end up? I mean, Georgia to Washington is a huge
Yeah.
change as well. So
Yeah.
like what is the
Yeah.
process?
Yeah, that's a great question. My husband and I, we had lived in Seattle for about 10 years. And like kind of before we had moved around a little bit, like Midwest to South. So we had a community. We knew what it was like to live in the Northwest. We really liked some aspects of the Northwest and kind of the idea of raising our family out here. Um, so we were comfortable with like the big move, because we were new. We never Tacoma's about 45 minutes south of Seattle. I'd never been to Tacoma. Um, but it's definitely a sweet little town that has grown on me. But yeah, the process of finding and buying a business is really interesting. I mean, we looked at all sorts of stuff. We looked at like bar studios and CrossFit studio, like things that we had been into, like what might make sense for us, what makes sense financially. In terms of kind of how we evolved the like small car piece of it, it was like a 5-year thing. We had been talking to the previous owner for a while. He, I think, had been looking for someone to buy it, but he had ideas of what he wanted, and there were things that we wanted, so it never really aligned. And it's funny because my husband, he's a very gregarious, like very friendly, outgoing guy. And every time he would travel for work a lot, and every time he came up to Seattle, he would grab lunch with the previous owner. And I'd always be like, why are you still talking to him? Nothing's going to happen. And I would just like give him the hardest time for like taking the time to come have lunch. And he's like, you never know, Michelle. I'm like, sure, whatever. And so it's funny, like I think it took like both of our personalities to really like land it, because I'm more of like execution, figuring out financing, all like running through numbers, all the paperwork, that kinds of stuff was is what I do. And he's kind of the deal hunter, like very social, interactive kind of guy. So it kind of took both of us. And if he didn't have you know, the hunt to just keep grabbing lunch and things like that with him over that 5-year period, it wouldn't have evolved into um actually like making the deal happen. But that, we looked at, I think it's important if you like want to jump into buying a business or running a small business, it's really important to, look at lots of different things. And, it has to be something that you like, because it's really hard to run a small business. Like there are really hard days. And as the owner, you deal with all of, you don't get to do all of the fun stuff. You get to do all of the things that no one else can figure out and things like that. So I think it's really important to find something that you're already interested in and like doing. And on the hard days, you'll still get up and do it, even though it's a hard day. So yeah, we looked at all sorts of stuff. So this is kind of the one we landed on. Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like you guys have a nice balance of yin and yang type personalities, which feels
Yes.
like it would be helpful in, you
It is
know,
helpful. It's
in business
never
partners.
easy, working with your spouse or owning a business with your spouse. Um, but yeah, there's always tough, but yeah, we have a great balance of just personalities and what I'm good at, what he's good at, and things like that.
That's awesome. And do you find that it's hard to disconnect from work since you guys are so involved with each other and work and everything in life? Like, do you literally have to like disconnect and schedule and plan things like, okay, date night this time, like shut off time this time? Like,
Yes, yeah, and especially in the first couple years, because we were so you're so excited, you're so intense, you're building something, you're getting to know how like, we had never run a small business on our own, so it's like, I learned 5 different people's jobs in the first 6 months, and, um and when you're in it and you have like such a good division of like what you do, a lot of times during the day we wouldn't have really interacted very much because I'm doing my thing, he's doing his thing. Well, the one nice thing is we could go grab lunch. Um,
That's
we have
cute.
we have 3 kids, and so we'd use it as like dates. Hey, you want to go
perfect.
get pho? And we'd go get pho and talk about stuff. But yeah, that's that part I don't think we have figured out in terms of being able to turn it off. What I've found is being able to go someplace else and try to unplug has created moments where we can actually like let things go and just kind of like enjoy what we're doing. But I think, if you're super passionate about what you're doing
Hmm.
and you are excited about building what you're building, it doesn't turn off.
I get that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's awesome. That's cool. As long as there's that balance and it's not like you're bringing in the stress and everything. If you're bringing over the creative and the fun part where you guys are able to like
Yeah,
plan.
stress definitely still comes over too. Yep. That comes too. Maybe someone else has that figured out, but we don't.
So it's still a work in progress, but kind
I
of
guess so.
removing yourself and going to a different environment is
Yeah,
helpful.
that we've had some good moments of just kind of, but I think is it if you're building something, if you're really excited about it, you know, are the people that are, super successful at it, do they turn it off ever? I don't know. I I don't I don't know. I don't think they
Right.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense though. Because like you said, if you're passionate about it and you really do enjoy what you're building, I feel
Yeah.
like we work together and we have that balance, but also there is those times where like even when we're chilling, I'm like, I don't mind talking about this or planning this because it's like what we really enjoy. And
Mhm.
it's not like a burden or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like it's more fun kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
that's how you're able to do that.
For us, it's always kind of like, well, we're still like sitting on the couch talking about this instead of like we're in a corporate office job. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
like,
Sometimes we'll have a business meeting and we'll go get drinks, right?
Yeah.
And go
yeah.
happy hour and we'll talk business the entire time, but I'll have 2 old fashions and all is good, right?
Uh,
Right. And you're like, no one can yell at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I think it's
I
like
love that.
still a blessing,
Yeah.
to be able to.
Yeah, totally.
And Michelle, did you find that there were any kind of extra obstacles or anything because you are a woman in this business in this automotive world, and honestly, this is you're the first woman that we've spoken to and had the chance to interview and everything and stuff. And so, what did you find any extra obstacles or anything? You're strapped with the baby to you and you're doing these dealings and you're dealing with, I'm assuming, mechanics and people from like all different aspects because you were taking over the business and you said, running, doing 5 different jobs and stuff. Like, was it more difficult, did you think, or did you find like
Um, I
accepting?
don't I think there's, coming from healthcare where I think it's more women dominated anyways. And when you work in healthcare, it's not like you're standing in front of a customer and they're paying you and like there's not a connection of like, this retail transaction. And I had never worked in like pure retail, like in all the jobs I had before healthcare was all like sports coaching. Um, so
Really?
coach kids in sports. And, there was an interaction with the parents. So you really had to, they were kind of your customer of like making sure all was good with the parents. And but I never really had a retail interaction. And so I think some of the surprise that I had and maybe the things that were harder were just some of like the tough retail interactions that you have with people where, you have someone that's not super satisfied. How do you handle it? How do you de-escalate a situation? How do you make boundaries for people that might not be able to be de-escalated? And how do you protect your employees from being treated poorly and things like that? So I think that was just something I had to learn in terms of just not being I don't think it had to do with being female or male. It was just more like that was a learning for me. And it's still hard. I get I'm more introverted, and those like harder conversations, I take them to heart, but I'm much better at like being a little bit firmer or standing up or taking the brunt of whatever is going on. Uh, I would say there's a lot of surprising interactions I have with people just not quite trusting that I have knowledge that is maybe more than they do. When I first, they call, I'm a female that answers, it's I get a lot of sometimes, can I talk to someone that can help me with a technical question? Or things like that, and they'll wait, and I'll be like, "I'd be happy to help you." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So like I now enjoy those conversations because like 2 seconds into the conversation, they know that I know what I'm talking about. I can gain their trust, but there's always that pause that if my husband answers, he doesn't get. Um
That's
is
wild.
what it is. Um, and then there's also the dynamic of, working with your spouse, and if someone's known, my husband Austin and has talked to him, they call in. Like even last week, so we talked a couple weeks ago, and I gave you some funny examples. Like even last week, I had someone call, and they were like, I was like, "Hey, small car performance, this is Michelle." They were like, "Hi, can I speak to your husband?" And I was like, "This isn't my, like, landline, like, at my home." Like, this isn't dinner time and a landline in the '90s, like, like, it just I was like, "Oh, no." I'd be happy to and I usually am like, "I'm happy to help you," and they're like, "Oh, okay." But he's also wonderful, and I totally understand someone wanting to talk to him and not me. Um, but yeah, so I definitely get that. We have a wonderful team here in terms of like team dynamics. Yeah, like most of the team is male. I think the team that we have here is wonderful. And we all work really well together, and we have a high level of respect for everyone. So the people that have the different roles, we all respect each other. We have like a great working dynamic for the team we have here. Have we had people in roles in the past that have not stayed very long because they have never worked for a female and just can't take any direction from a female, and it's more this male, like,
Ego.
I know better than you, kind of like, you don't. Yes, those people, but they come and they go very quickly. But it happens more often, I think probably. But, the people that stay and the team that we're growing are the people that we want here. So yeah.
That's
That's really
great.
Yeah.
interesting.
But yeah, there's some definitely weird interactions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like the automotive industry, right? It's like an old boys club a lot too. So
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, there's
I
like
I I'm kind of yeah, I'm a pretty direct person, so it doesn't get past me too far. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And then, so what does customer acquisition for look like for you guys? I know you have like multiple companies. So are you do you have like a sales team, or are you out there marketing, or do people kind of already know the businesses because they've been, around and they have like a
Yeah.
reputation word of mouth?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot. So in terms of our customer segment, so we one thing, yes. So the small car's been around since the 80s. And what's wonderful is when we do work on someone's car, they go and they camp and they adventure in them. And all of the Vanagon people like to say hi to each other. And, when we have a great reputation like we do a great job, and people then go out in the world and adventure and then talk to the people next to them in the campground about doing the engine swap at small car. And then a lot of our referrals come from that.
Okay.
We're very well known in like our little industry. And so there's not a lot, there's a few leaders like us. And so a lot of people know, like, if I'm going to do my engine swap, I'm going to call small car. And so that's a lot of the like our name brand. I do like Google Ads stuff and things like that, but I think our biggest in terms of like getting people, because we have a national draw. Like right now, I have vehicles from Alaska that were shipped from Alaska. I have a vehicle from Idaho. Or two of them from Idaho, one from Central Oregon. So I have a really national draw just because of the work that we do and the reputation that we have. Um, when people call, they expect to get someone super knowledgeable on the phone. And so I do a lot of the initial sales calls to people if they want to know what it's like. I have 4 vans with our engine swaps on them, and I have one here all the time to show people. And so, I'm not a salesperson, but I just tell you from my experience and perspective of having and been in vans for 20 years, and the different combinations of parts and engines and things like that that work, and that my experience that have worked. And so it's more of just like how do you want to use your car, things like that. So in terms of customer acquisition, in terms of the initial phone call, a lot of people just call us because they know we're one of the best. And then we really prioritize having someone that is knowledgeable and can really relate on kind of that initial conversation to explain how the process works, all that kinds of stuff. The other pieces of our business, so we have an e-commerce platform that is like our website where we sell parts and kits, and we sell to other shops across the country as well, which is great because they are repeat customers. They can get familiar with our parts. They get familiar with us. Um, and usually they have my cell phone number. And usually it's really wonderful because we get to support other shops that are working. This is not an easy industry. Automotive is not easy, especially vintage vehicles. Like, everything's 40 years old. And so we love supporting other shops and having those relationships with other shops. And a lot of times we have personal relationships with them. We bring our kids to all these, there's van events that people have, and we bring our kids to them. So a lot of people know like our kids and things like that. So that's another customer segment that we have, that's really important, that we really love having. And then we have like the DIY customers where we do phone support. So in terms of sales, a lot of times I'm doing like the initial phone call for sales, and then the repeat technician, or like the shops, if they a lot of times we're just on repeat. They know our parts. And if they have questions, or, hey, Michelle, something's out of stock, they'll text me and I'll be like, oh, sorry, we actually have it. Or, oh, I'm 2 weeks out on having that. So a lot of it's really personal, and just like creating a brand loyalty that we've had, and really, continuing that. Once, I think when my husband and I bought the business, we did a lot to improve on things that already existed. And I think that has been really recognized in the industry too, of just the improvements that we've brought to our existing kit, our systems, our communication, things like that. So that's how we really drive sales.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a nice community, kind of like
Yeah.
by people who are, within the industry as well
Mhm.
as people who just kind of enjoy it and do it for fun. So, love that. Can you explain a little bit about the process of like, okay, so you just bought this business and every business has their own processes, or, I've been in a lot of like giant companies, lack of processes.
Mhm.
What does that look like? Like you buy the business and now you're trying to wrap your arms around, I'm sure, like the
Yeah.
processes and any customers and relationships. Like what does that process look like of transitioning in and then saying like maybe we can do things better, like
Mhm.
maybe we can have a
Yeah.
process here.
Yeah, that was a lot of the work I did in like the first year. So my background's in industrial and systems engineering, and so um that's essentially, like, what I have expertise in is working in different systems, and so my approach for everything is to learn first, and so, try to understand how things worked. I learned all of the systems. We had our shop system was, like, this back end, like, Linux system that we hosted on site, with, like, a big computer with tapes. Um, and I learned how to code in that system, and, uh, fix it when it would break. So our whole approach in the first year was just to learn from everyone, learn the systems, kind of do it how they were doing it. In terms of like incoming sales, there were a lot of people like it was in the middle of COVID, it was so busy. I would be getting like I got access to Instagram and people were like, I already have a quote. I just want to book it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so there was like just a lot of like some low hanging fruit of just like some quick sales and just getting processes in place. But really, we did a lot. I just did a lot of learning and then would just start making decisions on, our shop system it was a risk. And it took forever to quote things like that. So that was the first one I changed. But that went live, January 1st of 2022. So almost a year after we bought the business, we essentially went live with like the first system change. But I think a lot of what's important, like even the stuff I did in healthcare, was a lot of like learning other people's processes and understanding why they did things. Because if I just came in and like was like, okay, we're going to change the system, but I didn't maybe extract all of the labor rates that we already had built over the last 40 years, or all of the, there was a lot of work that I did to try to extract as much as I could out of the system, knowing how we used and quoted and things like that. Because if I didn't take the time to learn, I wouldn't have had any clue, and I would have done an awful job of implementing a new system. We one of the other things, like we went over to Microsoft from our email platform and all that kinds of stuff. So, just I just took it a chunk at a time, and like every implementation takes like a year. And then even in a small business, it's not like I have a huge team to implement things. A lot of times it takes way longer because if I sat down and just did it and that was just my job, it'd be done and it'd be perfect, but it's not. And so even for someone like me that's really good at implementing systems, like it gets done in okay, just because I'm doing a bunch of other things and it takes me 9 months longer to actually get something like really nicely done how I would like it to be done. But yeah, I would say that's a really important thing is just, if you buy an existing business and there's existing people doing functions, it's like take the time to learn what they're doing, um, work with next to them. If they're out, fill in for them so that you know how to do what they're doing. And it took us 45 minutes to do big job quotes before. And I would do them because I wanted to learn all the different pieces of it. I wanted to learn how to read the parts and the labor lines and things like that. And Yeah, that piece is really important. If you just come in and it's like a big company overtaking a smaller company and you just smash it's just going to be the same bad thing, but a new system. So,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think that's really important, like to learn the process and to understand the why, because I think it is really easy for people to come in and just like, I'm just going to blow it up. But I think that discounts, it's like there's a lot of intelligent people who came
Oh,
before
yeah.
us. And so it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like we're standing on the shoulders of giants type thing. So it's kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
we need to understand why and then kind of see like what are the needs. And
Yeah,
so I think
Totally.
that's really important and
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
love that.
that's great.
And then do you wanna explain just, like, for people who are maybe listening and then they're like, "What like, could I maybe I like camping," just kind of like a quick little intro. What could they get from Crooked Finger? And
Yeah.
then what would they be coming to Small Car
Yeah.
Performance
So we
for?
we essentially have two brands of companies that we run now. So 5 years later, we have two brands that we run, different companies through. So Small Car Performance is our Vanagon, essentially our Vanagon business. We do have five physical lifts. So we do all sorts of service, upgrades, shocks, springs. We have our own brake kit. We specialize in Subaru swaps and all the parts related to that. We will swap a speedster, we'll swap a bug, so essentially any vintage VW. We recently did a speedster replica, which was really cool. So that's like we have like that Vanagon business as a small car performance with buying parts and all of that. And then Crooked Finger Designs is our other sister company brand that we run under the same roof that is more focused on power systems and developing power systems, installing power systems into any vehicle or camper that moves down the road. Um, a truck camper, if a lot of truck campers, you'll buy them and they don't have any power system in it. If you want to run a fridge or a heater or you want to put some lighting in it, you need a battery for that. And so we make battery systems in different form functions for like essentially anything that moves down the road, even like a tractor trailer, we can put our battery system in. It's something that we developed when we were putting power systems into the Vanagons because there's full campers in there. So essentially, Crooked Finger Designs is our brand that is growing rapidly in that space in power systems, in overlanding, truck campers, all that kinds of stuff.
So
So
cool.
great.
It's
So you
like
can
we really
convert, yeah, you can convert any vehicle like an SUV or something into like
Yeah, totally.
like a camper.
Yeah.
I know we were just talking about that because I have a Mazda, and she can off road and stuff. And it's like, well,
Okay.
this one's almost paid off, and it'd be great to make her into like a little camper
Yeah,
off road
totally.
vehicle
Yeah.
and she's big enough for like us to sleep in,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
everything. And I was like, we just need power so we
You
can
need
operate
power.
anywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people, like, if you only have, like, 2 people in a Mazda, you could, like, take out the back seats if you really want to, and you can put, like, a little battery and a battery system under there so that you can kinda have a fridge or some lights and things like that. So
great.
yeah, it pretty much anything that goes down the road
Okay.
that if you want a battery that doesn't drive your car and you want it to do something else, we're really good at that.
That's amazing. And so you work with other shops, you work with people who are DIYing or working out of their garages and just fixing up their own vintage vehicles and stuff. How far back do you hold parts for? And like, can you get a vintage piece for like a 70s vehicle or something there?
So we make aftermarket parts. And so we make brand new parts for mainly the 80s version of the Volkswagen Vanagon, but a lot of our parts will apply to the 70s buses. And so we will like Subaru swap really we've Subaru swapped like a mid 50s barn door Volkswagen. Like I said, we just did a Speedster replica, which is like upper 1050s car, right? It's on a
Yeah.
Beetle pan.
Cute.
But yeah, we essentially make new parts specific for these platforms. We don't make every part. Things that we specialize are like the Subaru swaps, some brake kits,
Okay.
coolant pipes, things like that. So our parts are pretty specific. Um, but yeah, they apply going back probably pretty far, depending on kind of what project you're doing.
Mm, that's so great. Yeah, my dream is to have a VW van and go camping. So
It's a
definitely be
lot of
thinking.
people's dream.
Yeah.
And it's great because people will grab one and then they'll send it to us and we'll run through it. We'll tell you what's working, what's really old that's never been replaced. We'll give you kind of like a red, yellow, green, and we'll give you all sorts of options to put a new fridge in, a new heater, lighting. You can pretty much we install modern air conditioning in the vans. So yeah, you can go all out.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
you could have heat in a car like that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's the bomb. I have that that's been like one of my favorite additions to my van is I have a little propane heater in it and
That is
um
so cool.
yeah, it's great.
Especially there, yeah, that comes in. So you need that.
Yeah. It's just like you don't think about going or not going if it's cold, right? You just make sure you have a little propane on board and you don't have to worry about it is gonna be too cold.
You're ready for all the adventures, no
Yeah.
matter
Yeah.
the environment brings.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you guys? And we'll also include it in the show notes for anyone who is listening.
Sure. We're physically located in Fife, Washington. And so that's where our shop and our manufacturing facility is. And we have a website. We have a few websites that we can link if you want to find the different businesses. So we can link that and then we're physically located in Fife, Washington, and it's just a shipping fee away to ship your car to us, which a lot of people do. But yeah, that's where we're located.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I wish you guys all the luck with your podcast too. So,
Thank you.
Thank you
yeah.
very much. Yeah, this
Love
has
to have
been
you
great.
back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Great.
sure.
Love that.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.